Today, we'll be taking a look at a Minolta 28-85 autofocus lens. It's a pretty nice piece of Japanese history. I kind of like it. Osaka, Japan. In 1926, Japanese-German camera company were making cameras and lenses. 4 years later, in 1932, they changed the name to Minolta, Mechanisms, Instruments, Optics, and Lenses by Toshiba. They were making great cameras and camera lenses, and they actually developed the very first autofocus system, which is in these generation of lenses right here, like a 1985. However, Honeywell did not really like this idea, and they decided to sue them for patent infringement. After that, the photography division of Minolta kind of lost some steam, lost some ambition, and they decided to merge with Konica and becoming Konica Minolta. In 2006, they sold their photography division to Sony, and that's why all the early Sony models have a A-mount, which is this guy right here. Eventually, Sony killed the A-mount, and it became the E-mount, so now you need an adapter for this thing. So this is the Sony adapter that I'm using as a glass mirror separating the two sides. You lose about 1/3 stop of light if you're using this adapter. This adapter is quite expensive compared to the $30–40 lens. This adapter costs about $400 American, which is quite expensive. This adapter has a screw drive which allows the lens to focus. With a wide focal range, this means this lens can be used for landscape as well as standard portraits. Although this lens isn't the newest one on the market, can it still hold its own and give a new lens a run for its money? It's 6:19 in the morning right now. Woke up about 5:30 trying to catch a nice sunrise with my drone. Hopefully something nice came out of it. I have to see later when I'm editing. But welcome everybody to California in Maryland. Today, I'm in Anna Marie Sculpture Garden in Solomons, Maryland, looking at some fine art and playing around with this Minolta 28-85mm lens. And I will be using my Sony a7 III with an adapter. I'm going to be doing some testing for sharpness, some bokeh, and playing with the autofocus. And I will show you guys what that really looks like if you're using this lens, and how does it compare to Tamron 28-75 as well.
Tamaron's lens aperture is a constant 2.8, while Minolta's aperture is a variable 3.5 to 4.5.
How does this lens do for vlogging? I don't know, hopefully the manual focus, I set it to macro, is picking up my face relatively well. That was like way out of focus, so I readjusted the focus on the macro capability for this lens. Yeah, so I look like I'm now more in focus because the macro on this lens does this. Woo! I found the Pope. It's like a skinny Pope. Look at it. It's very, very thin. It's like the Pope airfoil, like the Pope rocket ship. It just takes off into space to, you know, spread religion or something. The lens has a minimum focus distance of 0.8 meters, but it also has a macro mode, which unfortunately lacks autofocus. It can be used to focus on about 0.6–0.4 meters.
Tamaron's close focus distance about 19 centimeters or 7 inches.
Sometimes the lens likes to freeze for no apparent reason, and like the Sony camera has to reboot, just like when it happened when I was taking a picture of the skate park over here. But weird vintage issues. Minolta 28-85 was one of the first lenses that came with autofocus back in 1985. However, currently right now with the Sony a7 III that has 693 autofocus points, and once you throw the adapter on it, because it's an E mount to an A mount, your autofocus points essentially become 9, which is ridiculous. But it's still nice for general purpose photography, and if you do intend to use this lens for video, well, you should probably be manual focusing.
When video autofocusing, the Minolta lens likes to operate in the P auto mode. Essentially, it changes shutter speed to whatever it feels to get the right exposure, which is not great for keeping 50 shutter speed constant. You could trick it with using an ND filter or exposure compensation, but it's not a very sustainable way of doing it. Autofocus sound on the Tamaron is quite silent, while the Minolta autofocus sound is quite noticeable. Take a listen.
It's by no means silent.
You can also notice that the front element of the Minolta lens rotates as a focus, which could be really annoying if you're using circular polarizers.
Today I'm in Patuxent Air Museum, and I'm checking out some cool planes and doing some more comparison between the Tamron and the old Minolta lens.
Here's a photo taken with the Tamron, and here's one with the Minolta taken at the closest focusing distance. Putting those pictures side by side, you can see the difference. One is the color hue. Minolta has a warmer color hue than the Tamron. And if we zoom in to check sharpness, the Tamaron seems to me a little bit sharper. So to answer the question, can the Minolta give Tamaron a run for its money? Well, it depends what you plan to do with this lens. If you're a professional, then this lens is likely not for you, unless you're looking for that Minolta optical character. If you're starting out in photography, this lens is great. I would recommend to get the LA-EA5 adapter. If you're doing video that requires autofocus, this lens is not for you.
Minolta 28-75 is categorized as a standard zoom lens. It has a metal body construction, and it produces pretty good bokeh at 3.5, at least in my opinion. And then once you stop this lens down, you should see some really nice and sharp images. So this is a F4J Phantom 2 airplane, and you can see the air intakes here are actually separated from the body, and the reason for doing it is because the slow air actually gets stuck to the body, and they did not want to have slow velocity air going into the intakes, so they separated it from the body so they keep the slow air moving down this path over there, and then the fast air, which is away from the airplane body, can go into the air intake, giving better performance.
Whoa.